And I was starting to meet people with cash who wanted to invest in storage deals, and they were real humans, and I could look them up on LinkedIn, and they were actually building businesses instead of just anonymous 7-letter accounts on Reddit who were just meaner than a snake. So in 2018, before this, this self-storage building was open, we were running our student storage company. We were starting to accumulate some net worth, some resources. I started the Sweaty Startup podcast at first, and I was talking about the podcast on Reddit. And I secured the Sweaty Startup real estate, or the Sweaty Startup Twitter handle at that time, but I didn't tweet. There's no tweets on Twitter until late 2019, and I got serious about it early 2020, a couple months before COVID hit. But I was recording. I was doing a mentorship call with my brother, who was starting a lawn care company and a landscaping company while he was in college, and I was like, I just need to record some of these thoughts. I'd be really interested to hear myself later on start some of these thoughts. And I was also into podcasts at the time, people recording podcasts. I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. I got really excited about it, like I do everything. And I recorded a podcast every week for a year in 2018, and nobody listened. I was getting less than 20 downloads per episode for the whole first year that I was doing the Sweaty Startup podcast. It was on small business management, and I go back and listen to my first episodes. They're quite funny. But at the time, I was trying to drive traffic to my podcast some way, somehow. I had no idea how. I'm just releasing this podcast into the oblivion. So I found the entrepreneurship community on Reddit. I started posting there. I made friends with a couple of the mods, and while many people roasted and hated on Sweaty Startup on Reddit, just as they do here on Twitter, a couple people reached out to me, and I made a couple of relationships through that Reddit group. One being Mitchell Baldridge, who is my CPA and business partner now, and another one being Moses Kagan, who at the time was active on Twitter and was tweeting. Moses followed me and started, reaching out to me every now and then. And he called me out of the blue one day. And I knew that Moses was a successful real estate investor. And I'm like, wow, how is this guy calling me? He was 5 years ahead of me in my career journey. And he called me up and said, Nick, you got to get on Twitter. Like, these people on Reddit, they don't understand. They're not in the trenches. They're not doing business. They're hanging out in their parents' basements. You got to come over to Twitter. That's where the deal makers are. And I said, no way, Moses. Twitter is where people get angry about Donald Trump. That is not a place where I want to be. I don't want to hang out on Twitter. There's nothing good that happens there. So I ignored him, and I did not listen. 6 months later, he calls me again. He said, Nick, you're writing too well. You're doing bigger things. You need to come to Twitter. Come over, make a post. I'll try to get you a couple followers, and let's just see what you can do on Twitter. This time I listened. I'm still thankful to this day that he called me a second time, that Moses called me a second time, took it out of his time, even though I ignored his advice the first time. Called me back, said, get on Twitter. I got on Twitter. I made a full deal breakdown of one of my self-storage facilities, profit and loss statements, how we, the occupancy reports, all the things about our storage facility. Posted it. Moses retweeted it with a comment and said, Nick would be a worthy follow. Moses had about 3,000 followers at the time. And then boom, I had 350 engaged followers later that day. And that's when I was hooked, and I was building, and people were DMing me. And I was starting to meet people with cash who wanted to invest in storage deals, and they were real humans, and I could look them up on LinkedIn, and they were actually building businesses instead of just anonymous 7-letter accounts on Reddit who were just meaner than a snake, right? People on Twitter were in the trenches. They were building companies, and I stopped posting on Reddit, and I started posting on Twitter like the next day.
Big news, guys. I created a free PDF that details my method on how I analyze a self-storage facility and figure out what it's worth. Give me a pen, the back of a napkin, and a couple metrics, and I can figure out about what the property is going to be worth to me. If you want to download this PDF, click in the show notes, the first link, and you can give me your email address, and you get a email right away with a 4-page PDF that outlines exactly how I think about underwriting or giving my initial analysis on a self-storage facility. Again, click the link in the show notes, and you're going to get that document for free. Before you go, we have a new sponsor of the show, recostseg.com. And if you bought a piece of real estate, you need to get a cost segregation study done. It's what allows you to get all that sweet bonus depreciation, and it's how real estate investors like me and many others pay almost nothing in taxes on an annual basis. You can cost seg a single-family rental, a short-term rental, or a large commercial property. recostseg.com is affordable and aggressive and super fast to turn them around. They've done 10 plus cost segs for me this year. They're going to do many more for me. Visit recostseg.com to learn more.